666.
Benzema is, of course, if you don't dare visit Jeddah, by the way, in Saudi Arabia without knowing this full well, Benzema is the striker for Jeddah's Al Ittihad. He signed a 3-year deal. He's a 2-time Ballon d'Or winner, so he's one of the best football players in the world, bar none. 35-year-old. Jeddah, by the way, Richard, we discussed this in a previous episode. Al Ittihad was founded in 1927. That's kind of amazing. And every time I see that, I'm like, that's kind of insane. Yeah. So it's
the oldest.
It's the oldest. Yeah. And there is a very, very strong fan base for Saudi Arabia, for Al Ittihad, not just in Jeddah, but across Saudi Arabia, which is really kind of cool to see. Like, I had a Uber driver in Al Khobar who was like, yeah, Al Ittihad. And I was just like, well, that's the other side of the country. He's like, yep, but Benzema. So anyway, huge fan base, huge club. Benzema gave an interview, and this is my one big thing, because I thought it was pretty interesting what he said in this interview to the media arm of the Saudi Pro League. He said, so he's now in Saudi Arabia playing. He said that he joined Al Ittihad, and this was in the interview, this summer because he always wanted to live in Saudi Arabia and, quote, help Saudi football grow. That is not something you're going to hear a lot of these other global football superstars say ever in interviews. I mean, the tactful ones will say, I'm excited about this opportunity. They won't mention the massive paychecks they're getting. But Benzema really took a different tact with this. He said, I joined Al Ittihad this summer, wanted to help Saudi football grow. He said after Real Madrid, he was there for 14 years. He wanted to try a new challenge. And then he said, quote, well, with everything I've made and gained with Real Madrid, I think it was for me the good moment to try a new challenge. For a really long time, even before football, I always wanted to come here meaning Saudi Arabia. And this is the quote that I thought was interesting. Also, it's a Muslim country. Straight away, I felt this love for me. On and off the pitch, I feel good. This country welcomed me with open arms. I feel the love of the people here, so obviously that makes me very happy. I really want to help Saudi football grow. Al Ittihad was a project that was just starting to burst from everywhere. So from my side, I wanted to be part of the story. That's the reason I came here. He added, I'm really surprised and pleased about the level of games here. Really surprised because in Europe, we don't watch much football from here. Nowadays, we are watching more and more because of the big names they signed. And then the article discusses all the names that have been signed: N'Golo Kante, Jota. I mean, you have Ronaldo. I mean, there's Neymar. I mean, a ton of big names are now playing in the Saudi Pro League. I just thought this was really interesting because a lot of these players that played for international teams, played in the EPL or across Europe or wherever they came from and are now playing in Saudi Arabia with, large paychecks, very few of them are Muslim, are followers of Islam. And I thought, like, that's actually a really interesting angle. He is he's a practicing Muslim, and his girlfriend, with which he has his 4th child, I don't have her name in front of me, actually, a supermodel, of course, has also converted to Islam. And, I just thought this was an interesting angle. He said, look, this country has a very significant place in my life because Saudi Arabia is home to the 2 most holy sites in Islam. And as a Muslim, there's this like extra incentive for him to come and play in Saudi Arabia. And this is really short because this is all it is, but I just thought, well, that's, really interesting. That explains why he has so many fans in especially Jeddah, but, across Saudi Arabia. And I think that, that's just an interesting angle. Like, Ronaldo is not a Muslim. Neymar is not a Muslim. A lot of these players are not Muslim, but he is. And so for him, there's just extra juice playing in Saudi Arabia. And this interview was easily the most positive that any player has given about the Saudi Pro League, about what he's doing at Al Ittihad, and how much he likes living in Saudi Arabia, which I think is really cool. So he said the team hasn't changed from last year, which is good. There have only been a few reinforcements. I mean, the Ballon d'Or winner would count as a reinforcement, definitely. He says we have a good squad. We're working well together. They're in 4th place now in the league. Al Hilal is still ahead, and I know that because we talk about it on the show, Richard, but also before I got off my flight, some guy was refreshing my last flight here, which was actually from Switzerland, which is super weird, but the guy was refreshing the Saudi Pro League standings. I guess they were playing a game, and I kept seeing Al Hilal at the top. I felt really bad for looking over his shoulder, but I was like, why is this guy looking? That's interesting. You would just randomly see that. So yeah, Al Hilal is in top place, but just interesting. I mean, good for Benzema. I mean, this interview was very, the first such very positive interview about this league, which is actually really taking off. And just the last thing to add to this was just in Saudi Arabia for about 10 days. And on the nights in which games were played, the streets were noticeably quieter when games were on, and games were being played in virtually every restaurant. Every restaurant seemed to have some sort of setup, a big TV or a projection screen, and like streets were quiet during games. I mean, the Saudi Pro League is enormously popular in Saudi Arabia, and we know that, but just like seeing it, I was like, whoa, that's like almost like the Super Bowl every single weekend where people are just not doing anything else but watching Pro League. So anyway, cool interview. You can check that out. It's an ESPN.com link. And I think the video is also linked to that. So just really interesting stuff.
I love that. And I don't have a lot to add. I mean, he's, everybody has their own reasons. And we've gone pretty deep into the Saudi Pro League in terms of even the demographics. I mean, he's 35, but the average age of the transfers was 27. So you've got some youngsters too. Obviously a guy like Benzema is, a premier, marquee get because he's a Ballon d'Or winner and because he's a real talent. But it's gotta be a really, remember we did the topic on, remember we did on the Islamic Hijra and the Islamic year, and how if you're a Muslim, you have to sort of in your head keep two calendars, a Gregorian calendar and the Islamic calendar, Hijri calendar. And it's those, if you're abroad or whatever, as a Muslim, it's those sort of constant reminders that you're not someplace that's home. You know what I mean? And it's got to be fascinating for a guy like Benzema to hear the muezzin call 5 times a day. He's Algerian, but he grew up in France. So, this is as a Muslim, that's got to be a wonderful thing where everybody's doing this at the same time.
Yeah, he's like, this is sure. You don't need to write me this big of a check to come here. I actually really want to.
No, we
but I'll
don't
take
know
it.
that.
No problem. Yeah.